What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Enjoying the Review. I'm your host, Incomparable Zach Jones, and today I am going to be reviewing and recapping Star Wars Skeleton Crew Episode 8, aka the season finale, entitled The Real Good Guys. Before I get into it, I want to remind everyone to please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Costs nothing, helps me out a lot, helps in the algorithm. Also, thumbs up, positive reviews, comments, all that good stuff. And if you like, you can follow me on social media on Twitter or Blue Sky at Zach Jones Live. That's ZachJonesLive. All right, guys, let's get into it. So the season finale. Now, anyone who's been following along knows I've kind of been, middle of the road on this series, and that's going to continue here. I think the season finale was good enough. It wrapped everything up with a tidy bow. It gave us some decent action sequences, and it sent us home happy, I guess, as a viewer. That being said, there are still a lot of things in this episode that make very little to no narrative sense, and I'll get into those in detail as I recap the episode. Most of them center around the Jude character, either him making very stupid decisions, or in the 11th hour of this show, they kind of try to redeem his character a bit, but it feels so inorganic to the point where I just don't buy it, because they never really set it up. And so when I'm just like, why does Star Wars always have to try to redeem the bad guy to a certain extent? Can't he just be an awful person? I don't know. I get it that sometimes it's fun to play with shades of gray. But I honestly think he would have been more interesting if they just said, no, he's the bad guy, and we're not going to redeem him. He's trying to do bad. So yeah, the kind of 11th hour, them trying to, make us think that he's not as bad as he has been this whole show. I'm just I didn't buy it. It didn't work for me. And also just even though, and by the way, I'm going to rate this episode a 6.5 out of 10. And that's also what I'm going to give this season as a whole, 6.5 out of 10. I think it's just okay. By no means do I think this is must watch. I think, if someone's not, really into Star Wars, I think this is very skippable. It's not going to really tie into anything else. It's just kind of on its own, and I think that's fine. I think this works best as a miniseries. So I hope they don't greenlight it. It's season 2. Again, not that this is terrible. It's just I don't need more of it, though. I think it's fine. Just leave it a miniseries. But I'm curious what you guys think. Would you guys want to see more Star Wars Skeleton Crew? Would you like to see a season 2 and have more adventures with these kids and Jude and everyone? But personally, I'm fine with it. Just the miniseries. I think it works better that way. Okay, so without further ado, guys, let's start recapping this episode, and I'll get into kind of the nitpicks that I had. So right off the bat, when I reviewed last episode, I was like, oh, finally, a cliffhanger that's actually gets me excited. So the cliffhanger was, the kids and the parents are reunited, but Jude comes up and he ignites his lightsaber. It's oh, what's he gonna do? And the parents are just oh, thank you, mister, and ask him if the kids were any trouble. And he just immediately turns off the lightsaber and says, oh, I'm afraid they are. They stole a spaceship and they broke all the protocols and everything. But my thing is that's how the parents react. There's no danger, and this guy walks up to us and ignites a lightsaber. They're not startled by that at all. I mean, I was just talk about taking the momentum from the prior episode and just You know what it reminded me of, actually, is that scene I hate in The Last Jedi where uh, Mark Hamill, Luke, at the end of Force Awakens, Rey hands him the lightsaber, and we're like, "Ooh, this is cool," and he just tosses it. That's what it reminds me of. Like we had this cool cliffhanger, and then it just shoved in the dirt. So I don't know. I didn't like that. So yeah, he's talking about how they broke all the protocols and stuff. So he tells the parents that he wants them to, go back to their houses, their quarters, and confine the kids there. And the droids, he tells the droids to watch over them to make sure they're confined. But Fern mouths off, so Judd tells her that she should accompany him to the supervisor to learn about duty and responsibility. And her mother, Farah, asks to go along with him. So this, again, another stupid decision. Like, as soon as he, told her, to go along, I'm like, okay, that's going to be his undoing. Like, I can see this coming from my way, and of course it was. But why would he do that? Like, the only explanation I can think is he's like, oh, she's so much more rebellious than the others. Like she won't be able to keep her mouth shut, even in front of the droids, and it's going to cause me an issue if I don't keep an eye on her. I mean, I'm being lenient here, given a lot of latitude, I guess, but that's the only thing that kind of makes sense. But again, a really stupid decision. He should have just, along with the others, no, go to your house, keep them confined, keep the droid on her, it didn't make sense. So back at their house, Wendell and Wim get into an argument about him taking the assessment. So Wendell is still on him about taking the assessment, and Wim says that the assessment doesn't matter anymore. But Wendell's like, how are you going to become a part of the great work without taking it? And he basically says that, there's more in the galaxy than the great work. By the way, since episode 1, they've been talking about this, the great work, the great work. What do we ever find out exactly what the great work is? Because the way, Jai kind of refers to it as just, it was just like, later on in the episode, he's like, yeah, you guys should get back to the great work of, making, minting more currency. And I'm like, is that what they're talking about? Is that the great work? Because we never really find out what that means to them as a society, really. When the series began, I said, the one interesting hook was kind of the mystery behind Atten. And, overall, not super interesting. So that's kind of one of my disappointments with the series. And yeah, I still don't think I 100% know, the structure of their society and what the great work means to them exactly. So Wim tells his dad that his adventure taught him to appreciate home, but that there's people out there trying to ruin it, trying to, referring to the pirates, basically, they're trying to ruin Ad. And his dad says that's what the supervisor is for, because, he's still drinking the Kool-Aid of what they've been taught this whole time. So in the supervisor, or on the way to the supervisor tower, Farah tells Fern that it's an honor to meet the supervisor at such a young age and wants her to make a good impression. Back at Wim's house, he uses the walkie-talkie to call Neil to try to form a plan to help save Fern. But the droids are watching them too closely, so he starts pretending that he was playing with his toys and whatnot. So Jod, Farah, and Fern go to see the supervisor, and the supervisor turns out to be a droid. This highly intelligent, droid. And Farah knew this, and she says the droid the droid supervisor is decreed by the great work again. who knows what all that means. So Judd tells the supervisor that he is a Jedi, which here in a minute will end up, being a mistake. But a part of me is like, why would Judd just volunteer that information? I mean, I guess he thought it would help him because, he would think that they would think that would make him more noble, I guess. But he asked the supervisor to allow his other ship in. This makes Farah become suspicious, and she asks why it wasn't able to come in and land just like his ship. And he tells her she needs to obey. The supervisor agrees with this, saying that obedience is very important. That's the other thing is they're setting this thing up so like there's some sort of commentary here about fascism, and really the whole Star Wars story is about fascism with the stormtroopers and the Empire and everything. But I just feel like everything was so vague about the AT-AT society that it never really became interesting to me, I guess. So the supervisor says the other ship may land if Jod can clear up one minor detail. It says the last message from the Republic said that all Jedi were traitors. So the supervisor asks if he's lying about being an emissary or a Jedi. Which brings me to another issue I've had all along. So, I said I think it was episode 1. Yeah, episode 1, where Wim was playing with his Star Wars toys, and he had a Sith and a Jedi, and he's like, oh, Jedis are the good guys, Siths, they're the bad guys. And I was like, well, if they're cut off from the world or whatever, what kind of television is he getting, to know this, and to now know that the supervisor, he heard like that Jedi are traitors. So if the supervisor is the leader of this world, wouldn't you think he would put out the message that, hey, Jedi are traitors, and like the Jedi would not be revered by young kids, but instead thought to be traitors? It's never explained, and I really just think they wanted to be like, oh, look, this kid plays with Star Wars toys just like you. And they never really thought of, like, the meta. I get, well, I mean, they thought of the meta in that way, but not in the, they didn't think about the in-universe part of it, and, like, does this totally, make sense? And I don't think that it does. So Fern yells out, that Jod is a pirate trying to invade the Mint. And the supervisor says that's what he suspected, and he tells the droids to seize the imposter, to seize Jod. But Jod is able to destroy the supervisor with his lightsaber, which very conveniently deactivates all the droids. Because, of course, why wouldn't they all be hooked into the supervisor so they would all go down at once? I mean, it's very convenient, but it's one of those things that I'll let pass. You're like, oh, okay. I guess the supervisor wants all this control, so of course he's going to wire all the droids into him, I guess. This also causes a citywide blackout. All the power goes out. So Farah tells Jod that she will allow his ship in so that he doesn't have to destroy the barrier, and he agrees because, like, he found like this master switch that would take down the whole barrier and allow the ship in. But she's like, no, I'll show you how to just let your ship in. And that way you don't have to take the barrier down and, expose our position and, put our whole society we have here at risk. Fern says that he is lying. So he kind of, threatens her with the lightsaber. So Jude calls the other ship and tells them to begin the invasion. So, there apparently was, you know, more to his plan than he was letting on. So since the droids are shut down, Wim is able to tell the truth about Jude to his dad, that, he's a bad guy and all this sort of stuff. Him and his dad go outside and they see the other large pirate ship, the frigate, come in and go down their street. And that ship starts blowing up property. Of course, we don't see it actually kill any people. It's just like blowing up cars and whatever. I think mostly like vehicles, So Wendell tries to run away, but Wim refuses to leave Fern behind. Right at that time, Neil and KB show up on speeder bikes. And they have a plan. They want to fly past the barrier and call Kim, the owl creature we met before, for reinforcements. So Wim speeds off with those two, and Wendell's like, "Oh no, you don't." So he steals another kid's speeder and catches up to him. He's trying to stop them, but they're like, "No, we're going to go save Fern." So the pirates start landing in smaller cover crafts, and they start rounding up people, basically to make them slaves, to make them credits. This is another thing where in the Star Wars universe, do you really need human slaves? Can't you just have droids do all the work you don't want to do? Couldn't they just turn the droids back on? And again, all this mysterious work the parents were doing, is that all they do? Is that the great work, like Jude says later? Is it just all to make more currency? And also, last episode, Jude went in that one vault, and we see it's just brimming with, gold or what, their currency, whatever it is. And the droids mentioned that that's not even the only vault there. They have a couple hundred of those vaults or whatever. So my thought is, if they didn't make any more money and they just stole all the currency there, it seems like it would almost be enough to cause inflation, in the Star Wars galactic economy or whatever. But the idea that they're just gonna keep printing infinite amounts of money, it's gonna cause a problem eventually, right? I don't know. It's just I'm probably thinking too much about it, but it seems like there would eventually be some sort of inflationary problem. So we get a bit of action here where the kids are on the speeder bikes and they're dodging gunfire from the pirates. They end up going in the forest for some cover. They got this scene where they jump a ravine, and Wendell's he's I'm bigger, and Wim's like, "Oh, trust KB, she knows the math," or whatever. And he goes over. Just a part of me though, I would have loved it if he just fell in the ravine. It's oh nope, she was wrong. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. So they end up again. The pirates are chasing them. They go inside this building. The pirates are shooting, inside through the windows or whatever, and they end up knocking Neil off of his bike. But he's like, "No, go on without me. You guys are going to need cover fire, and I'll figure that out." So they make it to the ship, the Onyx Cinder, but they can't take off because there's docking clamps on it, which apparently require power to remove. So Wendell and Wim plan to go to the supervisor's tower to restore power. Inside the tower, Fern tells her mom that even in the worst places they went, they ran into good people, and those good people could help them. So Fern wants her mom to distract Jod while she gets a blaster from one of the deactivated droids. But Jod, he can hear. He knows they're up to something, so he tells them to stop scheming and to listen. So he gets on like a loudspeaker that talks to the whole town. And he tells the people that he has taken control. He says if they follow his orders, his men will show them mercy. But if they defy him, punishment will be severe. So, again, he's horrible. He's trying to become a fascist dictator that enslaves all the people to make them currency. I'm just pointing that out because of how they're going to try to, towards the end of this episode, go, maybe he's not such a bad. No, he's terrible. So Wendell and Wim dodge more gunfire, and they make it to the tower. And so Wim shows up inside the tower, and he tells Jod that he has called in the X-Wings. Jod doesn't believe him, because the barrier will cut it off. And he starts telling them this, like, obvious untrue story about how they have this, like, special stone or something that would allow the communication through. And, of course, he's not believing him, but Wim and Fern start telling him this story to distract him so that Wendell can come in and restore the power, which he does. Once he restores the power, Jod holds all four of them at gunpoint, Fern, Wim, and their parents. So with the power restored, KB is able to take off, and we find out that she got SM-33 working again. So the pirates are about to shoot her ship down. When Neil, he put it together that because at Aten and that other planet they were on, at Akron, Ohio, since that one had the gun on the big gun on the rooftop of the school or whatever, he put it together that, they probably had a cannon like that too, and they do. So he goes and finds that cannon, and he shoots the pirate ship, which allows KB to make it through the barrier. The pirates do return fire, but Neil is able to escape, but that cannon is destroyed. KB gets past the barrier and contacts Kim. And Kim says she will send New Republic fighters to help. KB tries to warn Kim about the barrier, but before she can, her ship gets shot by the pirates, and it starts going down. So, like, Fern, Jod, and all them, they can see or KB's ship going down. And I think KB calls her parents, and they're like, you can fix anything. And basically it goes down really fast, but at the very end it kind of changes trajectory, but, like, still came down really fast. So, like, Fern, like, freaks out, like, oh no, she's dead. But of course, like, as an audience, we know, like, it's painfully obvious that she's fine, So Jod seems disappointed that, KB is about to die, and he's like, this didn't have to happen. And so I was like, I guess it's somewhat interesting that that's his reaction, but again, they haven't really set that up. Because he never really had that big of an emotional connection to the kids at all when he was with them. And so, I don't know, part of that I was just like, I don't really buy that, but, whatever. So Fern goes for the big switch that'll take down the barrier so the good guys can get in and help them. But Jod shoots at her, so she doesn't. Wim ends up also going for the switch, so Jod threatens Wendell with his lightsaber. So here we learn a little bit more about Jod's backstory, which this part I did like. So Jod tells Wim that when he was a kid, like him, he was starving and living in a hole when a female Jedi found him. He says she only taught him a little before they hunted her down and killed her in front of him. So presumably, she found him, taught him a little bit, but then Order 66 happened and he witnessed her death. A part of me feels like they should have done like a flashback of actually showing that. And I mean, there's a chance maybe they did that in I watched the pilot to the Bad Batch and then I never watched anymore. I remember that, I believe in there, that pilot episode, there is a female Jedi that's killed with Order 66 and then a male Padawan that escapes. But I don't know if that was him. So maybe this is already established in Star Wars. But I would have liked them to actually done that in live action. I think it would have got us a little more invested in his character if we could have saw that origin. He says that's the galaxy. It's dark with a few pinpricks of light. And he says for those pinpricks of light, he'll kill who he needs to kill. It sounds like Peacemaker, where he's like, I'll kill every man, woman, and child I need to for peace. So Wim ends up letting go of the switch, and he goes and hugs his dad. Jod says he doesn't want to hurt anyone. And he starts monologuing about he wants everyone to go back to the great work and make credits. That's what I was referencing earlier. Like, maybe he's right. Maybe that is the whole great work. It's just like making credits. But his monologuing gives Wendell time to sneak up and punch him. Jod ends up using the Force to keep the kids at bay. But Fern convinces Farah to help pull the switch and destroy the barrier, which she does. Okay, this part I found really stupid. So in the struggle here, Wim ends up getting the lightsaber, and he ignites it, and Jod sees him and just throws his blaster away. I wrote, for some reason. And I'm like, why? Like, this little untrained kid ignites this saber, and you're just like, oh, I'm gonna surrender. Why? Like, first of all, he could have just shot him. Second of all, he could have just used the Force and took the lightsaber back. Unless the idea is here, he was just like, oh, with the barrier gone, I'm defeated. I'll let Wim have this moment. Again, nothing we've seen of his character would suggest he would do such a thing. So the New Republic fighters show up and defeat the pirates, and we get some decent action here with them, blowing up ships and whatnot. So the kids run off to check on KB. They have a line where they're like, oh, KB or whatever. Even though, just scenes ago, Fern was convinced she was dead. But, whatever. So they run off to check on KB, and they leave Jod to watch the destruction. And as he's watching the other pirates go down, we see just the slightest of smirks on his face, like he's somewhat pleased. And again, I'm like, where in his character has it been suggested at all that he wasn't greedy to the max and would just be devastated that his plan, didn't work? I didn't buy this at all. That on in some way, he's happy that things worked out this way. I think like I said, I think they're trying to like redeem him in some way at the very end, and I'm just like, not only do I not buy it, but it's unsatisfying. Not every villain has to be Darth Vader. You don't have he, doesn't have to have this redemption arc. I would rather seen him like get his comeuppance and like we actually see him like put back in jail or something or whatever. I don't know. I didn't buy it and I found it unsatisfying. So they go, and of course, KB ends up being just fine. Like, they find the ship, it opens up, a bunch of credits spill out, and she spills out on top of them, and she's fine. And as we end, Wim looks up to the sky, and it seems like we get the feeling that, maybe he wants to be a pilot, or maybe he wants to join the New Republic, but it seems, he definitely wants adventure in his life, and he wants to be a good guy, fighting the good fight. So again, like a pleasant enough ending, to go out on kind of a hopeful beat and everything. But I just felt overall on this show, as I said in prior reviews, most of kid stuff and parent stuff is a been there, seen that kind of thing. Goonies, a million other, coming of age kid movies. Like, I've seen those archetypes before. I've seen the relationship with the parents before. And then the central mystery of Atten, which intrigued me in the early episodes. Now that we're to the end, I'm like, it still doesn't feel like we fully understand what their society was, and it never seemed, all that interesting. So, like, I'm still, like I said, I think a 6.5 is a fine score for this show. Like, it's fine. It got us there, but it didn't do anything extraordinary in my eyes. But maybe you guys think otherwise, and I'm curious, very curious, in fact, to find out. So please, guys, if you will, comment down below. Tell me what I got right. Tell me what I got wrong. Tell me how you like the show. Tell me if you want a season 2, or if you want it just this season on its own, like I do. But guys, I think that'll do it for today's show. So once again, please, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a thumbs up, positive reviews, comments. And if you like, you can follow me on Twitter or Blue Sky at Zach Jones Live. That's ZachJonesLive. But guys, until next time, I hope you're enjoying the review. Bye, guys.